Welcome to episode 5 of Peaking into Success. Today we have a man that is probably really well known for his voice, especially if you listen to BBC Radio Derby in the evenings, as well as for his Eurovision podcast, Nul Points. Today we have on Martyn Williams. So, hello Martyn. What got you into the career of radio and what inspired you to do that?
Well, radio was something that I felt like was a bit of a calling for me. It's something that I always wanted to do, and I think I must have been about 10 or something like that, and I bought a karaoke machine by my parents for Christmas one year. And rather than actually singing songs and doing karaoke, I just used it to record myself interviewing my sister or my friends or my parents or whatever it was, and making these tapes. And these tapes would get more and more elaborate. And then I decided, right, I want to make a radio station. So I again roped my dad into helping me create one in my bedroom, and it kind of went from there. And so I feel like I've always done it, and I've always known that I wanted to do it as a job at some point. So it's a brilliant medium. It's the only medium, I think, that allows you to talk one-on-one with the people who are listening to you. And TV doesn't do that in the same way. Social media doesn't do that in the same way. You can, because most people, when they listen to the radio, listen to it on their own.
Yeah.
And so that gives you a really unique opportunity to create a relationship with the listener that you are talking to, and you can just speak exclusively one-on-one. And there's something really intimate and something really special about that. It also, because you can't see anything, you can do theatre of the mind. You can use people's imagination to take them to places that they wouldn't be able to go anywhere else. And I love that about it. I love how spontaneous it can be, how silly it can be, how serious it can be. It's special, and I will always think that.
No, that's perfect. And I mean, you have the passion for it now, and if you've been in it and wanted it from the age of 10 and you still pursued it and you've got to the stage you are now, that shows that kind of when you're a child and you think, oh, when I grow up I want to do that, and you're the living embodiment of I want to do this. So you've pushed yourself and found them avenues to succeed in your career of expertise. And as we'll go on to, you said you started off in hospital radio to me earlier, and you've got now to BBC Radio Derby. So do you want to tell me a bit about how you got through the avenues to get where you are now?
Yeah, well, hospital radio, I think, was the first, what I thought at the time, and definitely still is, it was my first foray into like proper radio. Because I've been doing all these things at home, I've been building radio stations with old bits of tape recorders that I'd found and things like that. And I lived in Solihull, just outside of Birmingham, and one of the things to do there is hospital radio. They've got a great hospital radio station called BHBN. And I remember when I was 14 and I got in touch with them, and you weren't allowed to volunteer for them until you were 16. But I was absolutely desperate. I said, please, can I just come and have a look around? And so quite a few times, like, my mum would take me and we'd go and look around, and I'd sit in and I'd watch it all happen. And the second I was 16, I wanted to be doing stuff on the radio, and I wanted to learn everything there was to learn. And that was a really great training ground. And I'd say, if you are somebody who wants to get into radio or podcasting, right, it's basically the same thing. Hospital radio is a great way to do it, as is community radio or student radio, which I also did. But hospital radio is great because there are people there who really care about the radio that they are making. It's a great opportunity to try stuff and to get things wrong and to fail and to find your style and hone it, and also have that connection with people who are listening. that is really, really special, and I will forever be thankful to BHBN. And I did stuff with them long after I actually left Birmingham and moved around the country. I kept really kind of close contact with them. In fact, I still know some of the people who do it to this day. A really, really nice bunch of people doing really important stuff, and long may it continue.
Perfect. So you kind of hone your craft in hospital, then where was kind of the next stepping stone from there?
Yeah, so that's it. So I did a lot of that. I went away to university, and again, first thing I wanted to do was do radio the second I got there. I'm sounding very geeky, but I'm afraid that I think I might be. And so I started doing student radio,
Yes.
and that was basically what I loved doing at university. Forget the degree. I wanted to make radio shows. And you go there and you meet like-minded people who also want to make radio shows, and you make friends with them, and then your entire being for 3 years at university becomes doing that. So I did that. And then whilst I was there, I got a job at Radio York as a broadcast assistant. So I was, making teas, helping out, doing things. And that got me into that was me actually working paid at a radio station, which I was so lucky to do it. And it was because of my parents. My dad got me to write a letter to them. And I remember I wrote one and I didn't hear anything back. And I wrote another. And eventually I got to go in and do that. And that was my first proper understanding of working for the BBC as well. Yes. Wow, I couldn't believe I was doing that. And so from there, I worked as a broadcast assistant there for 3 years whilst I was studying in York. Then I moved down to London, got a job as it's called a studio manager, so it's kind of like a technical role, sort of technical role anyway, working for the BBC World Service and Radio 4. And I did that in London for a few years. And then I came here to Derby, and I've been here ever since, and just sort of worked my way up from reporter and journalist to newsreader, and then radio car reporter, so like a live reporter, and then eventually I became a presenter, and that's what I've been doing for the last sort of 6 years or so.
With the evening show, that is,
of course. With the evening show for the last round about 5 years, I've been doing the evening show.
So, of course, you've made your name for yourself in radio, and how did then the world of podcasting come into your kind of career realm?
Well, that was out of curiosity, I think, really. A friend of mine who also actually works for the BBC in a different part of the BBC, were talking one day about how we know that lots of people are doing podcasts, and we wanted to know what that involved, and we wanted to have a go at it. And we thought, well, what do we have that both of us enjoy that might make a good subject of a podcast? And we decided that it was going to be the Eurovision Song Contest, because both of us had been to it a couple of times, and we'd been on holiday to various Eurovisions, and we thought, well, we kind of were interested in it. Let's just have a go and see what this podcasting lark is all about. And so we started doing that, and then lo and behold, that's what we've been doing for the past kind of 3 years with that.
And I mean, it's been successful. I've listened to a few of your episodes and how you come across, and for someone as myself is not interested in it, you got me invested and made me curious and made me think, what are these songs? Why do you have the opinion on, say, Sweden, and why the fans' votes were so close and stuff like that? So that made me then listen to the songs, what got me kind of somewhat invested. So kind of as an outsider, following your trail and following you along, that made me interested in something that you're also interested in.
Well, that was part of the idea, really, of the podcast. We try and say that we're not experts in the Eurovision Song Contest, and we're trying to learn about it. And the idea is that it's accessible for people who maybe have a vague interest in Eurovision when it comes around once a year, kind of enjoy talking about it, but maybe aren't at the super fan status where they know everything there is to know about every Eurovision stat and every Eurovision song that there's ever been in all the host countries since 1950, whatever it was. And so we try and kind of tread that line and bring people information, interesting stuff, but not bombard them with sort of boring stats and facts. And I think we do that all right. We try and put a lot of personality into it, and our personalities into it, and I think that kind of works. But we're having a lot of fun, and I think so long as people come away having enjoyed it, even if they're not massively into Eurovision, then I think we've done our job.
100%, and I mean, you got me invested in it.
Good,
So.
I'm glad to hear it.
Moving on then, what would you say is your biggest achievement or your career high so far?
Well, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And I've been thinking about this a little bit more recently, because I think. So what I'm doing at the moment, I'm doing the evening show, and when I look back at the 5 years of that, they've been some of the most fun I've ever had on the radio, because I get almost complete control over what I do on the evening show, which is very unusual for local radio shows. You know, normally there's a lot of oversight and a big team of people, but it's essentially just me on the evening show, kind of getting to choose what I do. And I decided when we started the show that I wanted to make it about the arts and entertainment scene. I play music myself. I'm really into to music, and I really wanted the show to be a place to celebrate local bands and musicians and arts and entertainment. And I'm so proud that is exactly what I've been able to do. And we've had bands in session here and given them opportunities that they would never have had to play on BBC Radio and get their stuff heard by a wider audience. And then through that, we've done some really big things. Like just the other week, we did Derbyvision, which was like Derby. Sort of, this is two worlds collide here, but it's like Derby's answer to the Eurovision Song Contest, which got loads of local bands playing in front of a massive live audience. The whole thing was live on Radio Derby. It was a massive kind of logistical feat and a technical feat that we managed to get it to work. And we've done a load of things like that. So we're off to festivals all over the summer and bringing the show live from there. We did an entire open mic night from Dubrec, which is just down the road. It's a sort of music community hub. And we did every single song on the show live, which was, again, a huge undertaking. But the feeling of achievement that you get when you've done a show like that and you've got your team around you and you've been doing it is second to none. It's just great. And so, yeah, if there's one thing I can point to, it would be those achievements on the evening show.
Nice. And would you say through that, is there anyone that you found that was quite small, you gave them your chance and they've kind of excelled down the years? So you gave them kind of their little break and they've kind of taken it by the horns and kind of excelled from that?
Well, I don't know whether I should claim any success for anything like that, because there's a lot of other. Well, of course, it's down to the artists themselves. That goes without saying, because their talent and hard work is the thing that really does it. But also within the BBC, we've got a great thing in BBC Introducing, which is all about giving local artists a leg up and a platform. And I feel like part of what I do is kind of piggyback onto that. And I get to meet a lot of the people who've been discovered through BBC Introducing and give them that extra platform. And I do approach people myself as well, or people sometimes approach me and say, can I come on the show and make some music? But there have been some names that certainly for me are big, and certainly big locally. So yeah. The one I always reference, and this was one of the first people I ever met actually when I started doing the evening show, was a brilliant Derby musician called Emma Buckley, whose music I think is brilliant. I am a huge fan and I always sing her praises, but she's now in a band that is kind of performing at Rock City and doing some really big stuff. The Struts have never actually played the show, but I've had them on several times. Kelsey Carter is another kind of big name. I've got quite a few members of her band come on. So there's a few people, and I think you really get to know the characters of the Derby music scene, which is quite small, actually. And so the same characters tend to come up again and again, but they are so talented, and the stuff they've got to share is really phenomenal. And I think building those connections and giving them a platform is well worth doing.
100%. And I mean, by you doing that, even though it's a small pond, you're giving it that leg up, as you've said, and you're kind of helping them get to where they are and hopefully pushing them on in their career. Would you say, if you could do it all again with the radio and everything, you went back to 10 years old, and you could go to that 10-year-old boy in the room with the tapes, is there anything you would do differently now? Or
so hard, isn't it? Because I think if anything I would advise myself to do differently, I know I wouldn't do, because I'm well. Firstly, I think I think if I wanted to tell myself to get a career that would pay me a lot of money, I would tell myself not to bother with radio. That's the first thing to say. Nobody does this job for the money, let me tell you that. They do it because they love it. But I wouldn't change that. I love it. I think maybe I would give myself permission to take more risks.
yes,
I am a person who likes to be in control and likes to have stability.
yeah,
And I think a lot of my career, I have gone into it with looking for stability, which is quite hard to come by actually in radio careers. And I've been extremely lucky in that my job at the BBC is very stable, which is fantastic. And I know a lot of people that work in the industry don't have that stability. However, I think the people who take more risks and live a slightly more unstable life have been able to go on to do a huge more variety of things, and have been able to do bigger and better things perhaps than I ever thought I could accomplish, and perhaps will be able to accomplish. And I think that would be my bit of advice. Would I actually do it though? That's the thing, because I know how I like stability. So I think I'd go, thank you very much, future Martyn Williams, for that advice, but I'm going to stick with the stability, thanks. I don't know. But that would, I think, yes, take more risks would be what I'd say.
That's a good one. And I mean, exactly like you, I was engaging with you then, as I felt I'm very similar with stability. Keep to what you know. I like, if I go into a new job, I'm like, I want to stay here for 5-10 years. I don't want to move around and try a different career path. So I completely agree with you there. What I was going to ask you kind of to round off was, what's the plans for you and the evening show for 2023? What have you got planned? You've mentioned festivals, so...
Yeah, well, 2023 is going to be exciting, I think. There's a lot of stuff to cram in. The evening show, I don't think this is any secret, because the plans have been widely publicised for some time now. But the evening show, as it currently sounds, will end. I don't know when yet, okay, but it will be coming to an end, one would assume, at some point in 2023. I won't be presenting what comes next. So as for, I think it's just about celebrating what the last 5 years have been like over the summer, and maybe beyond that as well. Loads more bands to feature. I'm up and down Derbyshire like a yo-yo, going to festivals here, there and everywhere, and just sort of shining more of a spotlight on the arts and entertainment. And BBC Radio Derby as a whole, right, is a great place to come and celebrate being local and being from here. And that is what we will continue to do, and I will continue to do on Radio Derby whilst I'm here, which is exciting. And there's lots of really good stuff that's going to be happening over 2023. A little bit sad that it's sort of coming to an end, or it will come to an end at some point. But I guess all things have to come to an end eventually.
That's very true. Where can people, of course, find you while you're still doing the evening show?
Well, Radio Derby, of course, is my home between 7 and 10, most weekday evenings. Sometimes I kind of jump around and sit in on other shows for other people, but that's my usual home, between 7 and 10 weekday evenings. You can listen to the podcast if you're vaguely into the Eurovision Song Contest. It's called Nul Points, Nulpoints, which you can find on, anywhere really that you get your podcasts from, Apple, iTunes, Spotify, that kind of stuff. I keep thinking to myself, I need to have some sort of a website. I don't have one at the moment, but I'm going to work on that. But I am on social media. I can't promise that you'll find anything particularly interesting on there, because I'm not very up with putting things on it. I tend to watch what everyone else does and don't post enough about myself. But I am on Twitter. So if you want to look me up there and give me a follow, there might occasionally... I won't spam you, put it that way. You're not gonna get any spam from me, because you're probably not going to get anything. Anyway, Martyn with a Y, Martyn, MNW is what I am on Twitter.
Brilliant. And for any new acts in the Derby scene or East Midlands, how would they be able to contact you? Through Twitter or...?
Through Twitter you can, or you can have my email address if you like. It's just martyn.williams@bbc.co.uk, so you can drop me an email. It's always good to hear from bands. I will say now, we are chock-a-block with bands already booked in, but that does not mean to say that there isn't going to be room for you, or there isn't something we can do. So do drop me a line, because I'm always interested to hear about new bands and new people that are doing stuff, even if you're not doing anything with the band and you're doing something creative. I always love to hear from you. If you're local and you're in the arts or the entertainment scene in some form, please do get in touch, because I want to feature your stuff on the radio.
Brilliant. So thank you for coming on.
That's a pleasure.
And
thank you for having me.
hopefully we get to cross paths soon before you leave the evening show.
It would be lovely.
Perfect. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Peaking to Success podcast. If you enjoyed, please make sure you follow us on Spotify as well as Instagram, where you can see all the updates of who is coming up, as well as who has already been on the podcast, as well as Twitter, where there is information and interaction from me on there as well. Thank you.